A one, two, three. Hello, my name is Sebastian, and my chosen theme is individual and society. To me, there's no one finite definition of this theme, but what I found when compiling all these pieces is that you can boil its elements into three groups, either artist, subject, or the audience as individuals. Now, within these three groups is a variety of perspectives regarding how each individual views their society and interacts with it. Whether one takes active part in that society, rejects its customs, or even uses its views to their own advantage, those all fall under the theme of individual and society. Basically, it's all about interactions with the world outside of yourself. First thing I'm going to tackle pieces where the subject of each piece is directly interacting with the society that they're in. You'll notice that these are commonly depictions of royalty and propaganda, and that's mainly due to the elites wanting to win the will of their people or the society they uphold. For instance, the statue of Hatshepsut. If you don't remember, this was one of the earliest known women pharaohs in Egypt, and her whole thing with this piece was de-emphasizing everything that made her a woman. You can see she has a male beard piece, smaller breasts, and a male headdress. This individual, Hatshepsut, is playing into Egyptian societal views of authority by making herself seem more masculine in order to seem more agreeable as a ruler. While we can't say whether or not she agreed to these customs, she had to utilize them in order to get acceptance, which ultimately reflects how women were seen in this society. Now, with the feather cape, it's meant to distinguish one from others in their society. Look, you see a guy walking around with this thing on, and you already know he's a big deal. And you know why he's a big deal. Because in your Polynesian society, you place a lot of value on those thousands of yellow precious feathers on this cape. By donning this cape, chieftains and high-ranking members of the society could accentuate their individuality through the show of their wealth and power. They're playing into Hawaiian society's cultural values to flaunt their stuff. This piece is propaganda for the Communist Party, but the story it tells is of an individual who wants to make a great change in his society. A man who respects the old ways of life, reflected by his traditional clothing, but has a new big vision for the world, beginning by aiding this miners' strike. He's not flaunting his wealth or making his way on some lavish carriage. He walks on his own 2 feet, just like his own common people. Mao is appealing to a society of workers by both resembling them and going out of his way to help them out. In this instance, Mao sees the need for change in his society and decides upon himself to be that change. Lastly, with the running horn woman, you can tell by the animal horns on her head and the dynamic, almost joyous pose that she was a celebrated woman. Unlike the previous pieces, this isn't really depicting some important government official or royalty. Rather, she's most likely a woman who provided great fortune for her tribe. Because of interactions that aided her society, she was depicted in this piece in an honorable manner, further emphasized by her scarification and flowing raffia. There we go. This is one of our earliest pieces where the subject are generalizations of a certain part of society rather than specific individuals. So, if the subjects of this piece are actually representations of society who aren't really being depicted in the best light, who here is the individual interacting with society? Yes, the artist, exactly. Again, these aristocrats and their actions aren't commenting on anyone specifically. They stand as symbols for how marriage has lost all meaning for the upper class. Because elites use marriage for the purposes of gaining money or acquiring a higher status, they've turned what's supposed to be one of the greatest acts of passion a person can perform for one another into a loveless act. The artist here, William Hogarth, is an individual who's pointing out this irony in his society at the time. And you'll notice that when we see these artists commenting on their society, it's often in a critical manner. Just like with Rebellious Silence. What's unique about Rebellious Silence is that it exposes 2 different societies' views on one individual. On one hand, seeing this image from a Western standpoint, people feel threatened. After a war in the Middle East and a couple terrorist attacks, Americans are conditioned to feel intimidated by an Islamic woman with a gun. But on the other hand, it appeals to an audience of not only Middle Eastern women, but all women who share the feeling of being silenced and sexualized within their society. The subject's striking gaze and apparel is meant to stop men from looking where they shouldn't, and the poem about dying for a cause and the gun that she holds presents ideas of strength and power. This is an individual who, because of their religious and cultural beliefs, can be viewed in such different ways by two different societies, while at the same time, she gazes back, angry at the men who objectify her and empowering the women who suffer the same as she does. I feel like with this piece, it's really similar to Statue of Hatshepsut, where it's an individual living in a society that views them differently than they view themselves. Queen Hatshepsut was supposed to be seen as a man in a man's position, and Kadzikodi here was seen as a tribal man who often practices strange dances and hunts buffalo. Before I go any further, if you remember, this piece revolved around it being something created by Kadzikodi to be sold to non-Native Americans for money. At the time, Kadzikodi lived on a reservation far away from his native land and really removed from all the stuff he recognized. He painted buffaloes, dances, and people zooming across the hides on horses, which was really a romantic view of his tribe's past. But that wasn't his reality. Even though Cody's life didn't reflect what he drew, he knew the only way to turn a profit would be to play into what Americans expected his life to look like. In this instance, Kadzikodi and the Eastern Shoshone people are individuals who are both far removed from the old society, but also are expected to live as if they weren't. These are individuals who have to play into American society's view of them to make a profit, which again is similar to Queen Hatshepsut, as she was an individual who had to play into Egyptian society's view of who she should be so that she could be a more respectable ruler. The Kaaba is the first piece we have that revolves around not the artist, not the subject, but the audience as individuals interacting with society. Unlike these past two groups, there really isn't one unifying theme or feeling that connects all three of these pieces, as they're really a means of just practicing tradition. But you could argue that they're pieces that directly involve the viewer in some way, or even that they change the audience in some kind of way. And that idea of change is best exemplified by the pilgrimage to Mecca. You see, the reason why everyone who travels to see the Kaaba wears this white robe is to shed their individual status. No distractions are allowed on this religious pilgrimage. So by dressing everyone in a white robe, one can't be distracted by another man's high or low class apparel. Traveling to the Kaaba, one encounters a society in which all are equal as long as they're able to shed a small part of their individuality. And it comments on how because we're often caught up in what others have and what we don't, we're distracted from what really matters, Allah. But ultimately, you see why this fits into my theme. The audience of the Kaaba is expected to change themselves in order to create an equal society in Mecca. And what should changing oneself to better fit their society remind you of? That's right, Queen Hatshepsut. It all connects back to her. I think with a lot of the African pieces, it's sort of difficult to think of them in a contemporary context because they feel so removed from pop culture. But what's different with the Bundu mask is that its function is a lot like what Instagram is for us today. This was basically the Sunday Society's Kim Kardashian or Doja Cat. What the Bundu mask mainly did is that it gave recently matured women an image to aspire to be like. It portrayed the female ideal or what society valued in women. So this is really a tool to assimilate individuals more into their cultures and educate those on what they should strive to be. I'd say that here, the audience as individuals are meant to take what they see and adopt it into their own lives in an effort to live up to what society expects of them. Do you want to look hot? Then you want to look just like that. And again, because of how it's meant to change an individual so that they're more fit for their society, it's just like who? Queen Hatshepsut. Perfect. Okay. I'm not sure if you can tell, but this is one of my favorite pieces to work on for this project, and that's really because it's so unique compared to all the others. Yes, it's about the audience interacting with society, but I can't even compare it to any other piece, not even Queen Hatshepsut. Okay, so originally, this piece was a commentary on the commercialization of art. It protested the scummy actions of art collectors, and also talked about how the perceived value of art ties in with its price. But I want to talk about how its meaning has changed today. With the advent of social media and this new need to document the happiest moments of your life, which, don't get me wrong, is a great thing, you're not often confronted with a mirror of what you're really doing. How you're saying, haha, look at me, I'm having so much fun, or haha, look at me, I'm so pretty, look at me. But Narcissus Garden reveals that inner dialogue. How? Well, by leaning over and taking a photo of these thousands of silver balls, your large distorted reflection takes up all their surface, and it gives you a moment to evaluate your own narcissism, to evaluate how you yourself aren't separate from your own society. By taking that picture and posting it, you're asking others to recognize you for being smart and cultured, for liking art, because as a society, we place a value on people that like art. What this piece really does is reveal how, as an individual, you play into societal ideals a lot more than you might think. And again, that's okay. Getting recognized feels good. But you have to realize you're being enchanted by the formulated image of your life. You have become your own ideal. In this piece, the audience's individuals are being molded by society to become the ideal. And while the silver balls aren't exactly making this process run, they're highlighting that idea and giving you a moment to evaluate yourself. Thank you, and that was Individual and Society.